Environmental insanity, that is the topic of tonight's byline. Ted Turner is crazy. I just wanted to get that on the record. Turner is crazy, local, off his rocker. Now, given the industry that I work in, I work for an all-news television network, I kind of owe a debt of gratitude to Turner. The man changed the face of television news forever when he launched CNN. So due to that, I kind of owe Turner for the job I've got now. But between launching CNN and today, he lost his mind. Could have something to do with marrying Jane Fonda, but I can't be certain. Turner has long been an environmental zealot and has said some pretty outrageous things in the past that have proven he's lost it. Turner told a conference ahead of the current UN conference on sustainable development that the world needs to ban plastics. Quote, "I think what we should do about plastics is ban them." That goes further than the Toronto ban on plastic bags. He wants rid of all plastics. I think he would ban people if he could. There's an anti-human element to Turner. Turner claimed he was joking, but he actually told his audience that the world's problems could be solved if humans just stopped breathing. He said, we could ban human breathing, and that would really take care of the problem. And Turner laughed after his translator stopped and looked at him and said, "Are you joking?" But his joke tells us that at heart, Turner is one of the people that thinks there just needs to be fewer humans on the planet. Well, after you first, Ted. You go first. I'm fine with that. You start. We'll follow. Honest. Now, I've been telling you about this conference, that it was coming and that Canada would be there. This is the follow-up conference to the Rio Earth Summit, the one that gave us the ridiculous-sounding, spooky Agenda 21. As I've mentioned, Agenda 21 is a plan about ensuring that we all live the way UN bureaucrats want us to. It's about using the guise of environmentalism to fundamentally change society. The name sounds ridiculous, but there it is in the document all countries, including Canada, are expected to endorse this week. The document, a combination of confession and self-affirmation, has all countries making the following pledge. We reaffirm our commitment to fully implement the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, Agenda 21, the program for the further implementation of Agenda 21, the plan of implementation of the World Summit on Sustainable Development, and then it goes on to list 15 other international agreements that countries of the world have signed on to. It also says, we recognize the central role of the United Nations in advancing the Sustainable Development Agenda. A little while later it reads, we are committed to strengthening the role of the United Nations Environment Program as the leading global environmental authority that sets the global environmental agenda. Wow, that's a lot of power to the UN. But what is this agenda all about? Well, it's about changing the way the system works. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has said the current system's broken and we need sustainable development. What is that sustainable development system? Well, if you listen to the environmentalists, they will actually tell you. Tim Flannery, considered one of the leaders of the Greenies, he told me just ahead of the Copenhagen summit that the negotiations now ongoing towards the Copenhagen Agreement are in effect diplomacy at the most profound global level. They deal with every aspect of our life, and they will influence every aspect of our life, our economy, our society, our relationship with the developing world, our relationship with the environment as well. The environment's kind of an afterthought there. This is about every aspect of our life, our economy, our society. He said that here in Ottawa in a room full of journalists, and they just nodded along and they didn't say, hey, wait a minute. What does that mean? No one else was interested. Just ahead of the Cancun summit, Ottmar Endenhofer, a German economist and co-chair of the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, said climate policy is redistributing the world's wealth. Climate policy, sustainable development are closely related, and neither is about the environment. It's about policies ranging from full employment to labor agreements, gender issues to poverty eradication, and in the end, the solutions normally tilt left, sometimes far left. The declaration that Canada is going to sign onto in Rio sounds like it's just a bunch of platitudes with no real force. Believing that would be a mistake. This document that sees Canada and every other country that signs it declaring the United Nations has real power on the sustainable development around the world. And as the document makes clear, there is no part of human activity that this idea of sustainable development does not touch on. Agreeing to this will see the power of UN bureaucrats in Canada expand dramatically. For a long time, Canada, like so many other countries, is just, they've signed on to these agreements as a way to go along to get along. We really have to stop doing that. We have to reject this document. That would be a good first step. And that's the byline. Joining me now for more on the United Nations is UN is Sun News contributor John Robson. John, I just about traded you to the UN, and I know you're a big fan of that.
They'd be unhappy too.
Yeah, I don't think they would take you in the trade. You're not left-wing enough. I want to ask you, before we start off, on any of the other things that have happened lately to drive you nuts about the UN. 1976, there was a conference in Vancouver, and I found a reference to it in this document that they're signing onto about UN habitat and about how private property should be dealt with. And it basically said that land is not for private hands. It should all be in the public square. Here it is. Land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. The provision of decent dwellings and healthy conditions for the people can only be achieved if land is used in the interest of society as a whole. Public control of land use is therefore indispensable. They're basically saying to hell with private land ownership, and Canada signing on to this.
Yes,
again.
Stalin felt the same way, actually, as I recall. He really wasn't keen on private ownership of land. Has thing, though, that seems to me to violate the UN Declaration of Human Rights, which we're all very proud of because a Canadian helped write it, which says everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. No one is to be arbitrarily deprived of his property. Around the world, millions of people own land. And the UN Declaration of Human Rights says they get to keep it. So the UN can fight it out with the UN.
But this latest sustainable development thing says we have to plan our cities according to that sort of thing, according to the idea that you can't have private land in cities. That's worrisome when the bureaucrats just sign off on these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is one of those things. Everyone's, well, the UN, of course, is good. So if we don't go on with the UN, we're jerks, and no one wants to be thought of as jerks. And so you get a combination of secretly radical people in the bureaucracy trying to get the government to sign it, and ministers who don't want a political fight, figuring nothing will ever come of this. It's the UN after all. These guys couldn't fall out of a boat and hit the lake. So it's safe to just sign the Communist Manifesto or anything else they put under our noses. It'll get lost in the paperwork eventually.
Okay, but the UN's making more noises that are annoying you. What are your latest examples?
Yeah.
What do you got?
You know, what I did when I was getting ready for this segment, I just Googled UN report. And of course, what comes up is UN criticizes Canada. UN condemns US over use of drones. UN condemns Canada for complicity in torture. I mean, you look around the world. There was just a story today that says something like 1.5 million children in West Africa face imminent starvation. And I'm reminded that the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Olivier de Schutter, was just here bugging us and going on about how Canada is a wretched place. He said at the end of his trip, what I've seen in Canada is a system that presents barriers for the poor to access nutritious diets and that tolerates increased inequalities between rich and poor, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples. A system that tolerates increased inequalities. So our entire economy goes on to de Schutter's rubbish heap. And barriers for the poor to have nutritious diets. I mean, for heaven's sakes, where in the world is it easier for a poor person to afford healthy food than in Canada?
Well, in North Korea, I hear, has a great healthcare system.
And they don't have a lot of inequalities.
This is one of the latest ones from the UN. They're praising North Korea's healthcare system. Yeah,
but again, I mean, this is just standard UN stuff. Remember, they did a report on Israel and Gaza 2009 that was the new Human Rights Council that was meant to replace the ludicrous old Human Rights Commission signed onto, and then the author repudiated it. I mean, is there any folly that the UN has not endorsed? And people keep going around as though the UN has now sort of gone off the rails. No, the UN has been off the rails in many ways since it was founded. The idea of world government is just plain bad. But if the UN in the 1950s was not a source of any conceivable madness you could think of, it certainly has been for the last 40 years. And what is needed is that ministers of the Crown should stop putting Canada's name on these documents and stop giving this body legitimacy. I mean, the opposition was saying we'd lose legitimacy if we withdrew from the UN. Phooey. The UN has no legitimacy to confer. And if we continue to sign on to an organization that combines this kind of economic radicalism with a virulent anti-Israel, anti-Semitism on the grounds that that will make us look better, we must have no idea what looking good means.
All right. And of course, just today, here's the latest one. We'll leave you with this, John. Manakai with the UN said there are some places, some countries where the laws are particularly harsh in terms of restricting freedom of association. And for these ones in Algeria, Belarus, Canada, in particular the province of Quebec, Ethiopia, Jordan, Malaysia, Russian Federation, and Switzerland. Give me a break. They're putting us in with those countries.
And he forgot Syria.
Forgot Syria, yeah. Well, email us your thoughts on all of this. Byline@sunmedia.ca. Want to know. Stay or go in the UN. Byline@sunmedia.ca.